Welcome to the High Value Sales Show of Eversprint.com. I'm Malcolm Louie, the managing member of Eversprint, and today we're speaking with Hiten Shah, the president of MES, a full-service provider of global manufacturing and supply chain management services. Welcome to the call, Hiten.
Thanks a lot, Malcolm. Thanks for having me.
Hiten, you grew your company's revenue from $39.6 million in 2014 to $64.9 million in 2017, a 64% increase, and in 2018 you hit around $62 million. Before we talk about how you grew your company so fast, can you briefly share what your company does beyond my quick intro and how your company differs from the competition?
Yeah, we help companies with their supply chain management and global sourcing solutions. We work in main verticals that include lighting, industrial, automotive, and agriculture sales, agriculture industries. We basically do the whole supply chain value where we find suppliers, we do quality management, quality audits for suppliers, we consolidate shipments across different ports globally, we warehouse the components to be within 1 to 3 days of our customers, and we also do some value-added operations very close to the customers in our warehouses. So the thing that separates us is the breadth of our offering. Most of our competition tends to be suppliers that are willing to do consignment inventory from abroad, or domestic suppliers. Some other range of competitors are just brokerage services. They are not offering inventory management solution. Some of the suppliers do not have quality development type of resources near the customers. They only have back to the suppliers. So in our case, we have quality resources and supply chain resources in every country that we have a customer. So they speak their local language, they work in their time zones. And then it's their job to work with all the offshore sourcing offices in Hong Kong, Mexico, Vietnam, and China to do all the supplier side work. So that's the whole breadth of offering is what separates us instead of with many competitors.
Right. And do your competitors compete? Like, are there competitors that compete in the same verticals as you, or do you find that your competition also is not as specialized? Hence, the services that they can offer are also not as specialized.
So because we are somewhat focused across certain commodities and certain industries, our competition, for the most part, tends to be domestic suppliers. So we do not see companies that offer very similar to us in our verticals. There are a lot of companies that do a lot of automotive work, but most of those are actually owned by those Japanese companies or Korean companies, themselves. So we do not see much competition. We tend to have a fairly long runway in terms of the different industries we can approach, customers we can approach, different commodities we can develop, and different countries that we can source from. So we do offer somewhat uniqueness. And last year when all these tariffs were going on, and customers were very concerned about China, not just the tariffs, but the geopolitical situation. We have huge range of growth to move their sourcing from China to India, Vietnam, Mexico. So that was a big impedance actually that turned into a nice opportunity for us. Something like that.
Right. Now you grew your business quite rapidly, 40 million in 2014, up to 65 million in 2017, flat for this year, around 62 million. Can you share what the 3 biggest drivers were of your sales growth over the past 4 years?
The biggest driver, I would say, one of the most biggest drivers is our proximity to the customers, our closeness to the customers, our ability to work with them in a manner that themselves surprise. So one big driver, for example, is that we took a lot of headaches away from our customers about forecasting. In industries like lighting and some of the appliances and some other things, it's really difficult to forecast. So if you're building inventory and the whole operations plan based on forecast, you're going to fail miserably. You're going to have high inventory some months and you're not going to have enough. So what we've developed is some very analytical tools to be able to predict what the usage is going to be based on last 6 months to 2 years worth of usage. And we work with that model almost 80-90% of the time, unless we are told otherwise or from the customer. So that has improved our on-time fill rates, to over 99% over the last 3 years. We consistently rank in the top 10% of our supplier ratings, regardless of what customer we look at. If we're being graded on a 10-point scale, we always want to be over 9. If you're on a 4 scale, then we're over 3.6. On a 5 scale, we're over 4.5. So we're always very, very closely knitted with our customers to be highly ranked. So when the directors and VPs are looking at the supplier selections, we're always in the top 10%. The other is our ability to pick suppliers across different parts of the world. So we have been very nimble in moving things. For example, when the aluminum extrusions were imposed tariffs in US, within 90 days, we were able to move a lot of the production to India to get rid of that. And these tariffs in 2018, we have about 30% of our supply being already developed, and some are already approved and in production from India, Vietnam, Mexico. So it reduces, it allows us to be very nimble because we've been able to grow our moat in developing suppliers in different parts of the world. So proximity to the customers and being very flexible in developing a best supplier that matches our need are the two, the big things. And I think the third is as I said, the analytical tools to do our jobs better based on data sets. Our planning analysts, our coordinators, our quality people can work very efficiently and know what's going on, even if they're 10,000 miles away and then react to it. So I guess that's a part of it.
Okay, so the recap then, the three biggest drivers of your growth would be 1, proximity to customers, 2, your supplier network that's across the world, and 3, the analytical tools and data analysts that you have available to help your clients with their planning.
Malcolm, I would be remiss if I didn't say one more factor. Back in 2014, we developed what we call as a metrics management system. And so it has 5 different levels of reviews that happen globally across every one of our 110 team members, across quality, supply chain, all that. And that includes daily huddles. It includes weekly blitzes. It includes monthly metrics reviews. It includes bi-monthly one-on-ones, and it includes the annual metrics reviews as well. And so that rhythm, that cadence, that closing the loop on open issues, a very quick escalation of issues is kind of inbuilt into our culture that has allowed us to do all these other things better. All supplier selections to, moving goods, to finding the right warehouse partners, to locations, to finding the right shipping partners, all of that stuff. So I think the fourth part, which I would be remiss if I didn't say about our culture of metrics management system, basically.
Right. So the fourth factor is a culture and processes to stay on top of issues and get the work done fast.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, can you talk a little bit more? Let's talk a little bit more about all 4 of these. When you say proximity to customers, so talking about being physically near the customer's manufacturing facility. Is that what you mean by proximity to customers?
Yeah, it's 2 things. It's our commitment to every customer is that we want to be less than 3 days from their assembly and manufacturing locations, number 1. We want them to not have any more than 1 to 3 days worth of inventory. We want the inventory to be with us because closer visibility we have on their usages, more accurate our planning model is. So that's what I mean. And then we have, again, with customers too, we have a monthly reporting systems that goes out to saying, this is what we have in inventory, this is what we have, this is how we, this is what is in transit, and we engage with them on our physical meetings or conference calls and different tools to make sure that we are aware of what's changing in their needs, whether it's obsolescence, engineering changes, peak seasons, spike orders, all of those type of things. We stay on top of that. That's what I mean by proximity. We track them through different tools so that we can have the right amount of inventory available at the right time.
Right. So does that mean that for that in terms of which clients you work with, you only work with clients that are near your existing warehouses, or will you acquire or build warehouses near a client's?
Yeah. So we have some of our own warehouses, and then in some cases we use third party. So when we go into a new location, we always use a third party warehouse because it comes up very quickly. Within 2 months, we can have it set up, and we can have it all on our SAP with a clear visibility of inventory and very quick pop-up warehouses. That's really the tool. So because of our SAP and because of all the automation, efficient information sharing tools that we have and databases, we can pop up a warehouse in less than 60 days from a standing start. We can go in, and there is a whole checklist of stuff that we use to audit, 3, 4, 5, locations, or usually within 3 to 4 day period. And then, then it's another 2 to 4 weeks of negotiations and, verification, their customer referral checks, all that. And then, we move our goods. So.
And for these new warehouses that you set up, you just bring people in to operate them?
No. So in the first start is always a third party. We do not operate our own warehouses until we have a certain degree of revenue.
Okay.
So we have one location that we operate ourselves in Mexico, one operate in Ohio, and one in Poland. The other locations are pop-up warehouses, basically.
Right. Okay. So how do you trust that these warehouse operators aren't going to screw things up?
It's very difficult. And so we have learned, I have in my office a failure wall, and every year we look at and we put a new frame together of all the things that we could have avoided. And back in 2012, 13, and 14, all 3 new locations that we started, we picked a wrong warehouse partner. So since then now we have pretty sophisticated checklist filters to kind of look at what to look for in a warehouse. Plus, we've operated now our own warehouses, so we know, how efficient they need to be. By simple questions like how many trucks per hour do they load and unload, and how do they keep track of cycle counts, and how do they deal with the reject materials, and all these processes that we know have to be, world, benchmark standards. We were not looking at those before. So when we are auditing, we are doing 3, 4, 5. We start with probably 5 to 10 names, and then we have a team of at least 2 people that go visit and audit these suppliers, these warehouse partners, and usually it comes down to the final 2 that we really negotiate hard with. And once that's done, then we basically have an in-depth SOP that we go over, saying these are the things that we need you to do. So we provide our own software rather than logging into their systems and stuff like that. We've developed all those add-ons to our SAP. So every warehouse basically enters the system. It costs us a little bit more, but we are not worried about 10 different operating systems and their own warehouses and things. So we insist on all the inventory being into our own systems, and there's a whole detailed processes that we've written that we give them access to. It's on a portal called suiteprocess.com. So every warehouse people can go in and click by click link through and work in the test environment immediately. So that's how we've avoided by standardizing processes, by adding more filters, by more checklists, and having at least 2 people evaluate warehouse, not 1, because we've had misses in the past. So LA, for example, Tijuana, Juarez. We have a small warehouse in China that we use for certain purposes. All that stuff has been done using those processes.
How often do you have your own people visiting those warehouses?
So when we have a third-party warehouses, at least every quarter, our coordinators go. They do the physical counts. They go over any issues that are having, and we usually tie those in with the customer visits. So our goal is always that every quarter somebody's in those third-party warehouses, ensuring our goods are proper and alignment is there in terms of the service levels. If there is a truck that needs to leave at 8 p.m. and they need to work overtime, it doesn't have to be a big issue. We pay them and they take care of it.
Right.
They can't be refraining from it.
Right. And the warehouses themselves, the way they operate inside, is it super automated robots, conveyors, and all that thing, or is it very manual and people are driving around with forklifts and moving pallets around
Yeah.
and so on?
No. Our rhythm and cadence is not fast enough for robots and stuff. So they are still driven using a traditional warehouse. But we do have a fair amount of automation in terms of which pallets the parts are in. We added we converted our Ohio warehouse last year to a shorter aisles. So instead of like 12 feet aisles, we're down to 8 feet aisles, and that improves our skid number of locations by almost 44%. So we went through all of that in Ohio. We're going to be rolling that out in Mexico this year. And so we have certain negative efficiencies, and then the pallet positions are done using our warehouse system. So we don't rely on people to say, hey, where is the goods and where are the goods. As soon as the first 5-4 parts will say, okay, it's going to be F32 row, and then it's going to be E32 and all of that. So,
right. Got it. For the second driver, talk about having a supplier network across the world. Now, when you say suppliers, are you talking about fairly commoditized products and parts, so that there is a list of suppliers you can turn to at a moment's notice, or are you talking more about suppliers who can provide you with custom design parts on short notice?
So custom design parts. So it does take a little time to develop some of the tooling and preparing, like machining, preps and stuff. And then all of our products are industrial products. So we have to go through those fair samples or PPAP parts approval at the start to make sure that it meets the design specifications and that we have a certain degree of testing we have done, and then the customers will test it and approve for us to use that supplier. But what has helped is that as I mentioned to you early on, the extrusions was one example where there was a countervailing duties of 100% that China was imposed, and we moved a lot of our extrusion basically to India over a 3 to 4 month period. We have the same issue with these tariffs. We've moved tools around. We've shipped tools from India, China, Vietnam to Mexico because of NAFTA content, for example. We moved about maybe 13, 14 tools over the last 2 years to Mexico instead of relying on the tools. So we said this is what it is. We pay the tools to the supplier, and within 6 weeks in Mexico, we're doing the trials, and then week 9, we're running production. So that's what I mean by being nimble on whatever. There's Hiten had, for example, needs on. They had to have a domestic NAFTA content, so we ended up moving a lot of the production to Mexico for them.
Do you tend to go to the same suppliers often, or is it a constant? Are you constantly finding new suppliers?
No, so we have. So there is the new suppliers usually, for example, in some of our commodities like aluminum, die casting, zinc, iron, and things like that. We're always finding new suppliers to support our growth, as well as to balance certain things. So, we're deep into some of these commodities where we are looking for very high precision, die caster with, leak testing and very intensive requirement for automotive components, very precision components. So our search for new supplier never stops. We are always, auditing. There is a whole sourcing team that is always in touch with new suppliers. We're always looking, for example, there's a big demand right now for, different countries outside of China, but where they have to have 1,600 tons and over capacity. Those presses have to be over 1,600 tons. Well, those are not easy to find. So, we always have our sourcing teams on the prowl saying, hey, we need some additional capacity of 1,600, 2,000 tons in India, in Vietnam, in Mexico. So that is a very specific need, like that. We have a specific need for iron. We have a very specific need for some copper forgings, for example, some very aluminum bronze castings, for example. So we're always on the prowl on, for very specific processes, technologies, material expertise, or tolerances and application expertise.
Now, are you doing this when you have a client order in hand, or are you just constantly looking and being proactive and being ready?
Being ready, that's the key. So, in the past, we always were relying on the RFQs to come and then do it, and we had quite a few failures because of all that. So now, we do not pursue business in many cases unless we know there is a supplier. In fact, we've been building a lot of prototype and R&D tools just to ensure that we can make the parts to very tight requirements, and as on our own expense, anticipating that some of these orders will come as we're negotiating through the sales funnel.
So you're more than just simply a middleman who between the manufacturer and the supplier of the parts. Right? It sounds like you're really quite involved with designing the parts and making sure they're made to specs.
Right. Our quality team is the biggest team, in our company globally. So we have, sourcing quality, we have inspections, we have quality leads that look over different things. We have supplier audit team, all of that stuff. So I think about probably 25% of our team is, in the quality roles of one way or the other. So
now, are other firms in your competitors structured similarly, or is the way that you do your business unique to MES?
We have not found anybody that we can say is a pure competitor that very similar or like us. We just haven't. Again, we have built this because of the needs that we have seen with the customers, and in some cases just anticipating the needs or having failed at some of the things in the past. So we're kind of, we're not trying to copy anybody. We're just doing our thing, trying to, often replace domestic suppliers, in some cases fragmented suppliers, from different countries. So as we've seen the need, we've done it. We have not really conformed to any adherence. We are probably one of the few teams that does not, our customer service and purchasing teams are almost like in one team. Usually you want that wall in between, but because we have built the planning tools around it, it just makes sense that we set up that way,
Right.
So that's very unconventional, we think, and but it just worked for us, and it's continuing to work. So we're not going to change that. We're just adding more tools to make it better.
Yep. For your third driver, providing the analytical tools and the data analysis that allows your customers to be better in their own planning of their production. Can you share a little bit more details about that? How that came into being and how you determine what to provide?
The problem is, like, one of the issues that if in order to do our jobs well, we need a good forecast that we can base our operations and purchasing planning on. Unfortunately, in some of these industries, the customers just have no idea. And so after banging our head against the wall and our inventory being up and down, we basically went through different companies, consulting companies, as well as university students. And we sponsored a variety of different projects to say, how can we predict better? Forget about a customer. Are there analytical tools out there that can actually allow us to, with a high degree of confidence, say this is what the future will be, so we base it on that. And so using different universities for almost a 2-year period, we finally, with Purdue University, we were able to build a model that actually predicts to what the future usage will be based on the last 6 months to 12 months worth of usage. And what that has allowed us to do is to focus more on operations, in the sense that, okay, let's reduce our production lead time at the suppliers down from 4, 5, 6 weeks to 2, 3 weeks, maybe even 1 week in some cases. It has allowed us to basically be very and to break up the parts into a lot more refined categories. So we rank our parts by A, B, C, D, M, and N, and these are all based on different forecasts, the frequency of usage, the level of usage, oftentimes the dollars used as well. We superimpose that sometimes. So it's allowed us to be a lot more intelligent and not rely on bogus forecasts that really nobody knows what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by just being very intelligent. The other one is that we got the Smart 50 award for the state of Ohio. We were nominated for 4 years in a row for different developments, and last year we got the Innovation Award. Was that we have a quality app that we have developed, so every one of our engineers, they're supposed to report every day from whichever suppliers they're visiting what they're seeing. And if it's a problem that they found, then they report it as a problem, and it gets alerted globally to different team members that need to know about it or can help it. And then, that's another tool. We have developed our own automation portal called Mesh. So all of the RFQs, for example, that we send out, on a click of a button, we can send to about 500 suppliers in the database. We can ask all of them to code a certain part. Those automation tools have allowed us to be a lot more intelligent, a lot more flexible, and a lot more engaged, and reduce repetitive tasks and focus on more knowledge-based stuff that we need to do.
Right. Very cool. Yeah, I remember in my business school days, we, as a class, we simulated a supply chain, right? And it was pretty easy to predict what was needed when it was steady, but all it took was one little bump, right? One change for just one time. And then all of a sudden, everyone in the chain was trying to make the prediction based on what they had solved recently to figure out what they need in the future, and that messed everything up.
Right. Yeah. And so we've built we have our own planning team models, and now we're really refining that. This year's goal is to refine that on a part level rank basis. So certain things will be escalated, and certain things will be done differently, and all that. So yeah, we just we keep. That's why I don't think we emulate anybody. I think we just we have a very, very strong sense of metrics. We'll get to in the fourth issue here.
Right. Yeah. And yes, and that does bring us to the fourth issue here. You talked about you developed a metric management system. Can you talk a little bit more about how that came into being back in 2014? What aha moment you had to say, oh, we need this?
So I think if you note the thing, I know you're looking at a 3-year sales growth, but we were $1 million in sales back in 2010. So it's been a pretty strong ride all the way up from that. And I think we're now setting up new base to, for a very rapid growth over the next 3 years again. But the thing is, what I found back in 2009 when we were just getting started was that I spent a lot of time thinking about what is really important. We found an opportunity that this is a very scalable opportunity in certain industrial categories, in certain industries, that we can be a very large business in doing this supply chain work. But how do we measure success? So we measured success by, if we delivered on time, the customer satisfaction is there, on-time delivery is one. If we deliver good quality, so our parts per million and other important quality thing. And while in order to keep both of these good, if we don't go bankrupt by keeping optimized amount of inventory, that ODSI and different ways of looking at inventory, those are the 3 metrics that we have tracked every month since May of 2009. So we're coming up to almost a 10-year completion, 11th year completion now. And then all 3 metrics are reviewed with globally on a metrics management metrics meeting, basically once a month that we have. And so that's one thing that we started off with. And then 2014, I went through a lot of different books as we were scaling up, and we developed a daily huddle routines. Then we said, okay, we need to have a weekly blitzes, so that daily huddles are usually within the same teams, and weekly blitzes are with global teams, interdepartmental. So and then we pushed a lot of those meetings to Mondays. So Mondays we started 8:15 and we ended on literally 4:30. Globally, every meeting for RFQs, for quality, for finance, for marketing, for IT, all of those meet on Mondays for the most part. We have a few teams that meet later in the week for various reasons, but most of those blitzes take place, and the agendas for those are set usually either Friday or over the weekend, so that Monday meetings are very fruitful. They focus on important issues, the escalation issues, and all of that. So that allows us to be on top of the issues as they happen. And then we have our monthly, daily huddles, weekly blitzes, monthly metrics, and then one-on-ones with individual team members, where we look at their effectiveness of their work, their interest in their work, their interesting assignments that they have, special things that we need them to do, all that. And then an annual, calibration on, hey, how did the year go, and what do we do? And then one of the critical things in our monthly metrics is we look at last month's successes, last month's failures, and next month's focus. Those are the three main things that we talk about. So we may have had very good launch for something. We may have a miserable issue with a customer, but all those pluses and minuses are highlighted. And we talk about them saying, this is what we need to do, this department, this team owns it, whatever it is. And then for next month, this is what we're going to focus on. We've got to get this SAP launch done. We've got to get this supplier properly done. We need to get this contract done with the customer. We need to get this IT application launched, all of that stuff. Whatever the issues are, they're all in front of us. Last month's past successes and failures and next month's focus.
Right. Now, did you have you mentioned how you're doing a lot of reading. Was there any particular books that really inspired you to put this process together?
So the daily huddle routines and stuff came from this book called Scaling Up. The monthly metrics is something that I was totally indigenously developed because I wanted to know what's important. And I thought once a month, at least, if we are tracking it, then it's good enough. So monthly metrics is something that I developed. And then, the Scaling Up has these daily huddles. It doesn't talk about weekly blisses, but then what we had is, because we only have a third of our team in US. The rest of the team is in different countries, different time zones, different cultures, different languages. So I introduced the whole month, the weekly blitzes to kind of get that exchange. And then within a couple of months, we said, hey, we can't have these weekly blitzes on every day of the week. So we pushed to get majority of them done on Mondays. So the rest of the week, people are free to travel or do whatever else they need to do. So some of these, it's just the book in terms of the template was just the Scaling Up is a pretty interesting book to read for, daily huddles and how do you manage that. But rest of it is just, like one-on-ones comes out of different books. Like there's several books on like the Google, one of the HR director, VP of HR wrote about Google. I forget the name of the book. There are a few other practices that talk about one-on-ones. So that's important that the managers are very engaged with individual team members. And then, I think in general, the underlying theme is that I want to do what, if I was working in a company and, for somebody, then I would want to know these things. How did I do last month? How am I going to do next month? What am I going to do next month? And, so that's built around that whole personal, interest and curiosity and drive.
Right. So how many hours a day do you read?
It depends. I go through spurts where I could read, 2 hours a day sometimes, but I'm reading at least an hour a day at the very least.
An hour a day. Yeah, it's a good habit. It's always new stuff to learn.
Yeah.
So for 2019, what can you share with us about your growth and sales plans and targets?
We just retooled our sales department into a couple of different teams and a little bit more industry-focused teams. So our target is to double again in the next 3 to 4 years, and we have a lot of traction in European sales. We've gotten some good long-term contracts with some of our large customers here. And over the last 3 years, customer diversification outside of lighting was the biggest drive for the last 3 or 4 years. And now we have, we call Siemens, Emerson, Honeywell, all these different customers are very new customers for us. So we have a pretty strong runway. If we take care of them and satisfy them, then we'll be able to, keep growing with them. It's
right.
A big opportunity.
So how much of their lighting business are you helping them with right now?
I'm not going to get into that percentage because they would not want us to.
Sure.
It's a significant percentage across a lot of the large lighting OEMs.
Okay. So it's not like the case where you're just doing a small bit and there's a huge amount to grow within those.
We have a fairly large opportunity. For example, the newest lighting customer that we added in the last 18 months is Philips, which is Signify now, and GE Lighting.
Okay.
And those are basically very, very small things for us, but they could be, there could be large millions of dollars of opportunities.
Right. Now, typically when these global firms start working with you, how much of their supply chain do they have you help with to start typically?
So we, because of the nature of the breadth of offering for us, there's always some aversion. There's always some concern that, hey, how are you going to manage quality? How are you going to make sure the inventory is right? All that. And we present to them our tools and our techniques and our processes, but it's not enough. So we always start on small opportunities with those customers. We have to prove to them that we've done well, launch some of these parts well, and then we keep growing more and more. So, it's a sequential. It's usually a 5-year growth curve with these customers to get to a significant, few $1 million each with them. So.
Right. But how far will it go, right? Because it would be risky for them to rely on you to handle 100% of their supply chain, right?
No. Okay, so just the lighting industry, aluminum die casting for lighting is about $278 million global spend. North American spend. Just that.
Right.
We have the iron spend for just iron spend is almost $8 billion, but in our verticals, it's almost $1.8 billion. The forging spend is equally. So we have we're never going to be more than 30 to 40% of a specific commodity spend on a specific customer.
Mm-hmm.
That's always the customers are very, very leery of giving us more than third, maybe in some cases 40-50%. But
right.
Hey, look, you guys are big enough now, and we have those pretty candid conversations.
It's a risk. It's a risk thing from their perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All these guys, none of these directors and VPs are going to sign off on too big of a risk, regardless of how good we are. So, so they are sensitive to it, and we are also sensitive to it. So
right. Okay, that's good. It's interesting seeing how it all evolves over time. How does your sales team go about finding new business?
We have trade shows. We have pretty good leads that we generate from our social media things, and then a lot of cold calls. As I said, in the last few years, we have added a lot of new customers. So the goal this year is that we get into more, deeper into all of these customers that we already have the vendor codes from and everything else. So
okay.
So it's focusing on these large customers, Schneider Electrics and Siemens and Emerson and Honeywell and all these guys globally can basically be a exponentially big opportunity for us.
Oh yeah. Now, when you go deeper within your customers, these big, huge global firms, is that on a one-on-one basis where you're working with your point of contact, asking them, who else within their firm in a different business unit, different product line, where you might be worthwhile, or it might be worthwhile for you to have a conversation with them? Do you do that approach, or is it more of?
Oh no. So we do have some very specific introductory letters that we write to target clients. There are various shows that offer these one-on-ones and stuff. So we take advantage of that a lot. But our sales tend to be pretty long cycle sales, and it takes a year to convince everybody on this thing.
Sure. Now, do you know who to contact within these global national firms that have production facilities across the world for new business generation?
What's that again? Ask me a question.
Do you already know? Do you know who these people are that you should reach out to? I imagine it's quite a mystery, really.
No. We have a pretty good idea. We do have a lot of different databases that we use. We have a lot of people that we have on our newsletters that we send out, blogs that we send out, even hard mailing sometimes we do. Our target for is almost 800 different clients right now. So it's going to take time just to get through all of them. We have a pretty good idea, and then we subscribe to a lot of different services like Hoover's and Sales Genie and this and that to make sure that we get the right contacts and everything. So.
Right. Okay. How do you typically approach the people at these 800 different companies that you're talking about?
Well, some we have basically gotten to meet them at the trade shows, and some we do cold call, and some we do introductory letters and then follow up. We email, blogs, all of that stuff. So it's a variety of different things. It's not just one thing.
Right.
It depends on how we got that lead or how we decided to go after that lead.
Right. Now imagine, because your service touches and impacts your clients' businesses in so many different ways, it's never just one decision maker, I would imagine. It's like there are many other stakeholders within your client companies that are involved in deciding whether to work with you.
Right. Yes.
I mean, how many typically do you have to convince that you're the right solution typically?
It's really interesting, and things that we have a sales meeting going on this week actually. So one of the things that we talked about was how different clients are structured differently, and we have a couple of large clients where a global commodity manager can basically make a decision to add a supplier. He has to do internal selling, but that's the only guy we need to sell, and he's got enough decision-making authority and responsibility to make that. Others, commodity managers or even supply chain managers and stuff, they'll bring us in to present to their directors and VPs and make sure that they are involved in that we are involved in helping them sell to their managers. So it really, all different customers are set up differently.
Right. Okay. Now, what would you say are your biggest marketing and sales challenges? The ones that you need to overcome to double your business in 3 to 4 years?
I think just walking away from the opportunities that are not right. We tend to waste a lot of time on things that we should have known early on not to pursue. And then the other is just continue to refine our methods. I mean, refine our methods, refine our message on how we're approaching, so they do give us the opportunities that we can help them with.
Right. So when you say you're walking away from business that are a bad fit for you, how do you get into that conversation to begin with? Right. I mean, ideally, you should never have those conversations from the get-go, right?
No. I mean, we get a lot of things. I mean, our customers reach out to us. Large automotive customers have reached out over the last year or two, and they'll ask us to quote 1 million widgets, and we excitedly participate in the whole thing. Those type of high volume stuff will never be successful using our model, using our overheads, using our pricing and stuff. We need to not participate in those. So that's what I mean by that. And I think, and then we need to ask for these specific high to low to mid volume components that low to mid volume components we know we can be very competitive on, and it is not very convenient for domestic manufacturers to make that. So we can add value to that whole mix of parts.
Right. Makes sense for them to find a supplier to do that for them for those low to mid volume components.
Like that, exactly. So we are exclusively focused on those type of components.
Right. Got it. All right. So you're finding that contacting and engaging the 800 companies on your target list isn't something that's top of mind for you? Your team has it under control?
No, it's not. I mean, there is a plan for it. It's not under control. I mean, so I mean, if there is a better way to approach something like that, we will take a look at it.
Right. Okay. 3 last questions for you.
Yes.
Say you're on a freeway cruising at 70 miles per hour and you see a billboard, or rather you see your billboard. What would be your billboard message? And keep in mind that typically people only have 6 seconds to read a billboard before they drive by it.
Yeah, for the last 6 months, it's been avoid China tariffs. I think otherwise we tend to have a little bit different, but I think in the last 6 months, avoid China tariffs. Otherwise, it's usually, we have engineered supply chains, essentially, is what we offer.
Yeah, engineered supply chains. Okay,
right.
Got it. And can you recap again who your ideal clients are? I know you talked a little bit about the ones that have low to mid volume components, and the best way for them to reach out to you to see how you can help them.
Really, them going through our website, understanding a little bit of what we do, because we do have a pretty comprehensive site, and then reaching out to us. We jump on that pretty quickly. Usually within 24 to 48 hours, somebody, is reaching out to them on what do they need, how do they need, what can we do. So,
sure. Now, is there? I know that you're involved with certain sectors, certain verticals, right? Those would be the ideal customers for you, right?
Yes.
did you want to highlight those verticals again?
Certainly. So the verticals that we are focused on are the lighting customers, off-road vehicles, and mining. So like tractors, combines, those type of customers, and then automotive, OEMs, and tier one suppliers. Those are the three main range of suppliers that customers that we're looking at.
Okay, and do they need to be of a certain size?
Yeah, we typically look for Fortune 500 companies because there is enough available purchases that makes it worth our while to spend 1 or 2 years developing them and then growing them into a few $1 million in sales. So it needs to be at least $1 billion in sales or more.
Right. Okay. And you have operations around the world, so not necessarily in the United States, right?
No, our warehouses, we have a small warehouse in China that we use, and Poland that we have, Mexico. We have 3 locations, a couple of locations in US, and it will probably add something in India by the end of this year to support our global customers.
Right. Would you like to share the domain name of your website?
Yeah, it's mesinc.net.
All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Hiten, and sharing how you accelerate your company's high-value sales.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. Really appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity.
We've been speaking with Hiten Shah, the president of MES, about his company's rapid growth. For interviews with other fast-growing, high-value sales companies, or to learn how we can accelerate your firm's high-value sales through automation, visit eversprint.com.